Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang Talk, Reflections on Autobiography of a Yogi. Let's begin together with a prayer. O Infinite Spirit, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Great Masters of Self-Realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, and beloved Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Guide us in our time together as we reflect upon this sacred text. Help us to receive the blessings, the treasures offered here, to apply them to our life, and to utilize the grace within them to awaken to our own highest truth, to see the divine light shining within us, and to share this light with all. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, great souls. So the chapter this week is called The Law of Miracles. And it's really a beautiful chapter. It's also quite, as I was reading through it, there's a density, which is interesting, to the chapter, talking about physics and science and the physical realm, and ultimately explaining that what seems miraculous is miraculous from the perspective of limited understanding in the material realm. So a term you may be very familiar with that Yogananda speaks of here is Maya. Maya is also known as delusion. And what in yogic teachings, what the yoga teachings say is that God, the creator, is it's called perfect stillness. So it's a reality, it's the reality in yoga teachings, the only reality. And God manifested that perfect stillness of divine reality. It's hard to talk about, to explain it. Was manifested physical creation. So God became the world, not only made the world, but became the world. So within the physical realm is the essence of divinity, and that's which we are part of. So our essence is divine. And it's said that in order to manifest creation, the perfect stillness began to vibrate. And first it vibrated in the causal realm, which is known as thought. So in the beginning was the word, is said in the Bible. And that word is the first beginning of vibration from perfect stillness, also referred to sometimes as the absolute, became the causal realm, the realm of thought. And then vibration increased, and from thought there was energy. So we have the causal realm is the first realm of creation, then the astral realm, which is the realm of energy, and then the physical realm. So in yoga teachings, God manifested through this way, through vibration, and that's what we are. So our physical body is the material expression of divinity. And our way back to unity, our way back to realizing our divine self, our divine essence, is we start very often with the body because we're in the body. So the mass consciousness, most people live in a worldly understanding. This is yoga teaching again. They live in a worldly understanding of reality. And there are the five senses that of taste and smell and hearing, sight. Let's see, you have to count them. So taste and smell, touch, sight and sound. And then often, you may hear sixth sense, which is about intuition. So that's perceiving on a deeper level. And that really is a doorway in the practice of yoga, is we move beyond the senses. Interestingly, part of how we move beyond them is we withdraw them. So rather than going out into the senses, we bring our awareness back inside. So we consciously direct the flow of energy from outward to inward. We do this in many ways. Part of it is so the expression of being centered, like to come back to center. That's a practice of bringing the awareness from an outward experience to a more inward experience. By doing that, the energy flow begins to come back in. So in yoga, we have not only a physical anatomy and physiology, but we have an astral one. So in the Raja Yoga course, we spend a few weeks talking about astral anatomy. What is that? Well, one of the core components of our energy body, our energy reality, are the chakras. And they line up with the physical body, but you can't see them. So it's been often said that if you were to cut into a physical body, you would not see those energy centers, but they animate us. And we need to have I was listening to a talk of Asha's one time, and she was pointing out that we need the torso to be intact. It doesn't, you could be paralyzed, but the torso has to be intact. You can't cut the torso in half and still be alive. And she said it's because it cuts the energy of the chakras. You could live without an arm, you can live without legs. The head, again, is part of that chakra system. So there's a certain central reality we cannot live physically without. And that reality is what's animating the physical body. So in yoga postures, when we're practicing, again, we start with body awareness, and then we begin to pay attention to the breath. Within the flow of the breath is the flow of prana, flow of life force. So what we practice doing is deep intuitive listening. And we begin to sense, or try to sense, a flow of energy within the breath and behind the breath. And we're kind of making our way back with our consciousness from what's called the grossest manifestation of divine energy back to the pure realization of the absolute, of perfect stillness. And it's sometimes referred to as climbing the spiral staircase, making our way back. So the base of the spine is where the first energy of the chakras are located, and that's the earth element. And we begin to work with that energy by drawing our awareness in and lifting our awareness here. And what happens is that the prana begins to activate those chakra, those energy centers, and give us access to soul divine qualities of the chakras. So one of the things that will happen is it moves us away from worldly consciousness. Worldly consciousness, again, it's all about energy. So it's not from a moral standpoint of bad and good. It's instead looking at it from false and true. So in yoga, I've talked from here about the yamas and niyamas, they're guidelines for living. Those guidelines draw the energy back in, and it raises the energy here. Beneath the physical spine is a reservoir of untapped energy known as the Kundalini. And what we're doing in yoga practice is awakening that flow of energy. Very simply, one of the simplest ways to awaken Kundalini is with kindness and compassion and divine friendship. It's very sweet. So, because those are soul qualities. So whenever we do anything kind, including a kind thought towards someone, right, just sending someone a thought of kindness, that releases the untapped reservoir of energy, Kundalini, and it will rise up the spine. Well, as the Kundalini rises, it moves through each of the chakras. And each center has a quality that's very supportive and useful for us in our journey, our spiritual journey in particular. Even realizing your highest potential as a human being, being able to tap into these qualities. So to give you an example of how it can work with our consciousness, the base Base of the spine is the first chakra, and that has the element of earth. When the energy is flowing outward, the quality of that chakra will show up as stubborn, rigid, unwilling. Right? I like to think of the mule. Like if that consciousness, if you ever feel that within yourself, first chakra, energy moving out. So a very simple way to change that, I say simple, not necessarily easy, is to direct the energy back in and find a way to lift the energy up. So one of the simplest ways I find that has some relative ease, is singing. Singing any of our chants here at Ananda. We have many, many chants, but any uplifting music. If you can't sing, put uplifting music on. Right? Even the sound of Om, some people play that. That vibration, right? It moves from the physical realm and it begins to lift the consciousness into the astral realm. Sound is very, very powerful, and uplifting sound is, Yogananda said chanting is half the battle in the spiritual life because it bypasses the mind, it goes right to the heart. So the heart center, we already moved from the base of the spine up through the second chakra, which is water element, third chakra, fire element, into the heart center, which is prana, vitality, life force. So simply listening to uplifting music can bring that energy right up. And it's very surprising. I was listening to a woman from the Expanding Light. She was teaching a class I was in. Her name is Bhagavati. Beautiful, amazing musician. And she really, her calling is absolutely music. And she was talking about one time when she actually lived here in Palo Alto. It was before I lived in the community. She was in the community, which is about 8 miles from here at the temple. So it's in Mountain View, right on the edge of Palo Alto, and the temple's in Palo Alto. And she was coming here for some reason, and she said she was in a very frustrated mood. Like everything was going wrong that day. And it just was getting the better of her consciousness. So she got into the car and she was driving here. It's a short drive. And she decided, I'm going to practice these 2 children's songs. So she starts singing them because I guess she was going to be performing them at some point. And she thought, well, this is a good time to practice them and try and get the lyrics right. So she's singing them, 8-minute drive, right? By the time she pulled into the parking lot here, she noticed her consciousness had completely transformed. Everything that was frustrating her, aggravating her, upsetting her, was gone. And she wasn't trying to make that happen. What happened, and she was sharing this in the class, is she had aligned her consciousness with a higher consciousness through music and through a very sweet, 2 sweet songs. She had no idea, even though she's a musician, an Ananda musician, so she knows the teachings, but still it was remarkable to her. And she said, really, she was acknowledging it just had gotten the better of her that day. And so she was helping us to see, wow, it's amazing how quickly we can change the flow of energy and guide it upward. So the second chakra is located between the base of the spine and the belly button is the third chakra. So it's in the lumbar area of the body. And this water element, actually, before I go there, let me mention the positive qualities of earth. So I mentioned rigid, stubborn, unwilling. Those are the chakra energy moving outward. Upward, it would be steadfast, faithful, and loyal. Really amazing qualities that are needed for any high aspiration we're moving toward. We need the power of loyalty. We need the power of commitment. We need to be able to be steadfast. That's very, very important. So to have access to that quality, it's there all the time. That's really what the yoga teachings say. We have, Yogananda said, within us is an abode, an inner paradise, that an inner oasis, always available. What the yoga practices and tools and teachings offer us is a way to access that energy and to utilize it. So it's also said about divine will, free will. What free will means, we can't change the laws of the physical world. We can't change those laws, but we can rise above them. That's the power of the law of miracle, right? So in our will, we have the freedom to choose to realign our consciousness with divine consciousness. That's the free will that we have. And Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda said, people, with worldly consciousness get confused and think that free will means, well, I'll say it this way, free will means I'm free to do whatever I want. There's truth in that to a point, but what happens is habit sets in. So there's not much freedom in the free will that's often practiced. True free will, when we align it with our soul nature, when we align it with the highest consciousness of absolute divinity, we feel freedom and we experience freedom, and we can transcend and move beyond the physical realm because we've reversed the direction and the flow of consciousness. So we're working with the physical laws, but we're working with a law that's beyond the physical laws, beyond duality, beyond Maya. And we are, what Yogananda said, is uniquely equipped as human beings in a human body. Our nervous system, the way that our brain is designed and our body is designed, and the consciousness that we have as human beings, self-awareness, we can utilize all of that if we have the tools and the desire to reverse that flow and become masters. And so in the yoga teachings, we're all destined of self-realization, of self-mastery. And the masters came to teach us that. They did not come to say, look how great I am. I can walk on water. I can raise the dead. They could do all of those things. They never did anything, Yogananda said, if they were not guided by divine will to do it. So sometimes masters you could encounter a master and not know it. In part, maybe because of your consciousness. I would say for myself, I could encounter a master and not know it because of my consciousness. Or the master might have put a veil over my understanding. So Babaji is said to do that. I don't know if you can see I don't know how much in the frame is today, but behind me on the altar, one of our pictures is Babaji, and he's known as the, it's escaped me in this moment, but basically he materializes and dematerializes. So Babaji still they're all deathless, but he actually comes into physical form and goes out of physical form. So he appears, right? So he can hide, right? They all could. Any of the masters can come back, and they do actually come back. So there's a woman in our community actually, this is a deeply sacred and holy story that I'm inspired to share in this moment. She had an experience. She believes, and it feels very true to me, of Yogananda. She's not on this path. This isn't her path. But her guru, who is a living guru, he spends part-time in the United States and part-time in India. Her life went through some transitions, and she was needing to move from where she was and looking for a place to live, and felt guided to move into the community. And she felt guided by she had Autobiography of a Yogi, and she was drawn to pull it off the shelf. She felt guided by Yogananda to move, and she just felt guided. So she asked with her guru, is this the right thing? And he said, yes, that is your spiritual community. So she was telling me, it's so interesting because we can't figure these things out with our logical mind. How could that be? It isn't that her guru was saying, change your guru. No, it wasn't saying that, but was saying this community is a spiritual community for you. And she had an experience in which her first week living in the community, late at night, she saw a man walk across the green, and he looked a lot like Yogananda. She just assumed it was someone who lived in the community who looked like Yogananda. We don't have anyone in the community who looks like Yogananda. So and it was maybe 5 minutes she saw this figure. It was very real to her. She absolutely saw it. Was standing right there, walked up to her. She was looking at him, and then he walked away, I guess. And so, but she felt something quite profound even in that. And so then she was asking one of the managers of the community, who lives here? Who looks like Yogananda? No, there isn't anyone here who looks like it. She told me later that she said to Yogananda, could you come back? She's not seen him again. She felt he came just for that time. He appeared to her. There was a story, these are true stories, right, of up at the Expanding Light, someone was visiting their adult child, and she was out walking the grounds, encountered Yogananda. Right? She said, oh, she didn't know he wasn't in the body anymore. So she talked to him. Oh, do you come here often? Yes, I'm here often, he said. And so then she later went home, saw her, I don't know if it was a son or daughter, and said, oh, I met your master when I was out on a walk. What do you mean? You met our master? Master's not in the body anymore. Oh, he talked to me. He said he comes here often. Yeah. So these stories are deeply, deeply, deeply inspiring, true stories. And so back to a master, and he will demonstrate what we call the miraculous, because it is miraculous from the law of the physical world. And one of the things that Yogananda says in his chapter here is science at this time can only, and this was written in the 40s, is only able to, because it's working with the physical realm, right? So it does perceive, and he was saying that the divine allows science to perceive, and he speaks in here about Einstein and the law of relativity and the reality of light and the speed of light. He's talking about these discoveries. In yoga teaching, it would be a rediscovery. The rediscovery of these things expands our consciousness. So they're very, very important. But the practice of yoga takes us beyond that. And as I was reading the chapter, I was reminded of just some wonderful documentaries that are out there. I mean, science is leaps and bounds. This is called the Age of Energy, Dwapara Yuga, and a lot is being discovered. And that lines up with the ancient teachings of yoga. So physics, quantum physics, I mean, there's just some really wonderful discoveries that are happening. And sometimes it's a discovery, the scientist will say, we can't explain it. We see it, we can't explain it. We've discovered it, we don't really know what we're looking at. We are looking at something. So one of the things they've discovered is that when you look on the subatomic level, I believe it's waves and particles, watching it changes it. And they can't explain that. Like, wait a minute, this is not just a reality they're trying to observe it, but once you observe it, it changes it. They can't explain that. They don't know how is that possible. In yoga, because all is consciousness, right? All is one. This would line up in the teachings of yoga. So let me, since I talked about the chakras, let me at least move through those before we finish. We can come back to finish this chapter if it feels right next week, if there's more that seems to be said. So the water element, the energy when it goes outward can be undecided, wishy-washy, not sure. So the water element can be, I don't really know. It can manifest in our life as not being able to land. You can't quite, so you don't have connection to the earth element, and then you're just you're too, in a way, energetically, too flowing with what's happening. So when that element has a quality of more mastery and the energy is rising, what we're able to do is flow with life. So I'm grounded, I'm centered from the first element of earth, but I can move with what's happening. Today when getting ready to teach, there were all these things that were like, okay, I'm not sure what's trying to happen with filming, with lighting, with everything. And so I'm so grateful to Deepika, who helps me film, that she was able to go with the flow, right? We were able to send texts and reach out to people and come up with something. Well, that requires being stable, right? Not getting thrown, and fluid, the water element. Moving up into the third chakra, fire, self-mastery. So this is really discipline. When we have access to this energy and are able to choose how we use it, and the way that we do that is through yoga practice. We begin to experience the energy and work with it. So again, any one of the yoga practices develops the flow. It draws the kundalini up. Yogananda encouraged it to be done in a smooth and gentle and gradual way rather than forceful. So self-mastery, discipline. When that energy is flowing outward, it's usually controlling. So we might be trying to overmanage our own life with that energy, trying to get everything right outside of ourselves. It doesn't work. I don't know if you've noticed that. And I've known people who are, wow, they're pretty masterful in the material realm. I have met some individuals who are impressive to me in their ability to actually pretty closely manage. But life is Maya, so it really is not, it's not possible. If it's not possible. So I watched that with them too, that I watched that happen. But the idea here is learning. The other thing that can happen is controlling others. So either we can be over controlling of our own life, that intensity is fiery, right? Or over controlling other people, right? Managing everybody, controlling everyone, teaching others who are not asking to be taught. So that's the energy going out. Bring in discipline, right? Choosing, this is what I want to do and I'm doing it. Great power there. So then we come into the heart center. So music, as I was saying, can bring us in here. Prana, life force, vitality. I often think of the ocean. That's one of the places I can feel the wind, the vitality of prana. And that's what we have here. So the heart center, full of feeling, and that's where we experience intuition. We can perceive through feeling. That's what Yogananda called it. He said intuition is experienced in the heart, and it's the voice of God within us. Well, in order for us to actually perceive that, the energy has to not be going outward, and as with everything coming inward. When it's outward, that prana, that life force, that vitality tends to be highly emotional. So roller coaster experience of life. Things are great, we're really high. Things are not great, we feel really down. So I'm going to wrap up quickly with this, just noticing the time. But we'll come back and I'll see you next week just to say some more about the law of miracles. It was a pretty big chapter. So this energy, when there's mastery here, we are full of vitality, energy, and life, right? And the purified feelings of the heart are very calm. So we can sense and feel and perceive the truth by taking all of the vitality and bringing it up. So this center here, the fifth chakra, is called ether, and it's expanded, calm observation, the witness, jnana, where we can perceive the truth. The base of the skull is the sixth chakra, that's ego-centered, and you come here, spiritual eye, soul awareness, unity with all that is. So this is the foundation for moving us toward working with the laws of miracles, how we can perform them ourselves or how they are performed. When others are doing it, they have mastery of the self. They have mastery of the energy, they have mastery of that astral body, and they're working on the causal body and they're moving beyond that. So I'll tune in to see what feels right to share with you next week on this chapter, the law of miracles. I feel like I've just laid a foundation for us on what we're working with when we're working with this energy. So I just invite you in the coming week to be paying attention to the qualities that I mentioned and see how you can work with them yourself. So how can you bring the energy in and guide the energy here? And again, I'll mention music as uplifting as one of the easiest ways. And just let it be a journey of discovery this week. Okay, great souls. So good to be with you. Wishing you many blessings today and always.